So, yo, what's up? Uh, there's been a lot going on, but then again, nothing at all. For starters, my hair is finally getting long enough to, do this. I keep having to, pull it out of my way. Yeah. I just had a shower today after mowing the front lawn, and, so my hair is all back to its fluffy, non-responsive, soft self. And so it's not wanting to stay behind the ear. Well, Memorial Day is come and gone. And generally speaking, not much has really happened. So far, I have not gotten a ticket for that little school bus incident when my brakes quit. For which I really must thank Dee Dee. She is my saving grace right now, because she said she was going to send me some brake pads for my car. The only issue now is replacing them, which shall be an interesting task. If I don't get any sort of outside help, I will have to actually read up on it and do it myself. Woohoo! I'm getting anxious and such for the arrival of a really good friend of mine who is coming to the States for 10 weeks in the summer. I have no Allen wrench, damn. The screws on my pocket knife are coming out, and I need an Allen wrench of all things to put them back in, which cement has seriously chewed up the blade of my pocket knife. My poor pocket knife. Like, from here over is just fine, but from here, pretty much to the tip, yeah, it's all chewed up. Put that down. I have a sense for playing with things with my hands because I can't focus otherwise. And tonight's just not a general good night for me to focus anyway, but I really felt I needed to do a video blog. Much to probably Zhang's disappointment, I did write a letter to my dad. A 7-page letter, in fact. Even though this next part coming up is to Caitlin's disappointment, and I had nothing nice to say. But it's the only thing I have to say to my sperm donor of a dad. They say it takes anyone to be a father in terms of being, you know, the sperm donor, but it takes a real man to be a dad. Yeah. I really don't want to call him dad. And when we talk on the phone and he's all, I love you, I never say it back. Ever. I have never been able to honestly say it back to him. Ever. Because I don't feel that I do love him. I don't. And, you know, I've given him chance after chance after chance, and hello there, Trillion! He just keeps screwing up, and, you know, even though he says, oh, hey, you know, we've made a lot of progress over the last 16 years, blah, blah, blah. No, bullshit. It's actually been completely the opposite. I have grown up, and he has... Never mind. I will just get off that topic now. So I wrote him a 7-page letter, at the very least telling him everything that's happened in the last 16 years, how it's made me feel, and pointing out his stupidity in his actions that he has repeated numerous times, one of which, when I was 11 years old, led me to molestation. It was my dad's fault for that. Unfortunately, a friend of mine who has been through similar experiences, I told the story to her, and sadly, I think that kind of hurt her more than it did me. I deeply apologize for that. That was not my intention. I probably should keep those kinds of stories to myself. I'll get to you, Sayaka. Generally speaking, the last couple of weeks has been busy, but not busy. It's been busy, but it's been quiet. Except for, mishaps with the 6-year-old, which I've been really confuzzled to deal with. And yes, I said confuzzled. No one can be the perfect parent, straight out. It's all a learning curve, but some learning curves are just like, I'm just sitting there like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? Because it's getting to that point where there's a lot of acting out. Lying has become a decently marginal factor. Running in the house is a really big one. Almost took a slip and fall. Well, he did slip and fall today, and nearly went face first into the wood floor. Yeah, that was kind of scary. Yeah, running in the house is a really, really, really big one, and the jumping and banging, and this morning he was quite loud. Starting at about 10 o'clock, it was, from his bedroom, and I'm just like, I'm down there on the couch, just like, But as long as it didn't wake his brother, I wasn't going to go up there and make my own set of noise and wake the baby up, so, I just remained downstairs. I did mention it once that he was a little too loud when we actually initially all got up. Letter to my dad. Confuzzlement of nanny job. Any of you who actually pay attention to me or my looks at all might notice something somewhere. I'm not actually going to full out say anything. I know that at least one or two will notice. Spider. In the next week or so, I've got to finish yard work because on top of doing the front yard, I have actually been asked to do the backyard. That's currently a doggy minefield, which I'll probably have to wear my boots for. That'll be interesting. I was told to take the lawnmower through the house. Are you kidding me? You take a lawnmower through a house? Whatever works. If she wants me to take it through the house, I'll take it through the house. Luckily, there's enough space. That would never be able to happen in my mother's house. Ever. We're talking pathways this wide at the feet. And it's like, yeah, no, you're not going to get through there. It's a wonder that you can have 2 adults and a medium-sized dog. Yeah, but that's my mother's house for you. But that and I really need to do the side yard here around the trailer, if not just around the trailer itself. But it'll give me something to do just to do the whole side yard because it's big. And eventually I seriously need to get some trailer jacks for the left side of the trailer. Because this right here, that is the front. That is the back. That is the left. This is the right. I know that doesn't make sense on camera, but believe me, that's how it works. So the way this has been leveled out is front to back, it's level. But left to right, it's actually tilting down to the left. So the leveler on the outside of the trailer actually has the air bubble on the right side because it's tilted like that. And it makes it really interesting because almost any sort of movement actually just shakes the trailer like crazy. I will barely move. I can just move my arm like this, and I can actually see all of my liquids over there shaking. I have a gallon of wine and a partial gallon of semi-strong plum liquor, which I actually surprisingly just don't touch, but I made them myself. I actually have made my own alcohol. And the funny thing is there's neighbors over to the right that make their own wine too. We actually got into a little bit of a discussion. We actually set it up that next time we generally meet and talk and hang out, we're actually going to have kind of a wine tasting session and stuff like that. And I really need to ask him how he manages to get his wine to be sweet. Because that's the problem I ran into, is my wine is not sweet. It is a dry wine. It is a very dry red wine. So, I'm just kind of yammering at this point because I have nothing else to really talk about. Like I said, not much has really been going on. Although, it is now June 3rd, as it is now past midnight, 10 minutes past midnight. I cannot drive anywhere. Ha 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 ha. Not just because of the brake factor, but because my tabs are now expired. Which my mother claims that she mailed the tabs off on Tuesday last week. And she lives 2.5, 3 hours away from me out on the coast. And here it is, it's just turning Monday and I have not received the tabs in the mail, and I'm going, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, because what happens if I don't get them by the end of this week? You know, I can't go anywhere in my car because it's just gonna be my luck that I get pulled over and ticketed. But I do have current insurance on it. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And seriously, it is State Farm. In fact, where's my wallet? Where's my wallet? Ah, there it is. I was told to put an insurance card in my wallet, which my wallet is totally Zelda. Fuck yeah. Yes. It is State Farm. And it is in my mother's name. Yeah, I probably should find a way to censor that out. I don't know how to edit videos or anything of the sort, so, yeah. I guess I'm fucked on that part, but, yay, spiffy wallet. Woo! Well, shiny, 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 shiny. Wait, that way. Yay. I like my wallet. Even though the person who bought it, probably hates my guts, and I don't hate them, but I'm not exactly friendly fond of them because of how everything worked out. I was used as rebound, pretty much, and I stupidly allowed it to happen. I saw it coming, I let it happen, it was my fault, and, not to mention how things broke off. I wasn't completely honest in what I told her. I pulled the I never loved you from the beginning card, and that wasn't entirely true. It really faded out fast. It did. It totally did. Because she tends to be a little OCD on a few things, and there were just things we just could not see eye to eye for. And, you know, some of the things that I value as a high moral standard for myself was not really being respected or anything like that. Primarily the big factor of it was just, how should I phrase this so it's not censored? Well, for her, I guess I'll just be blunt with it. For her, it was sex, 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 sex all the time. That's all it ever really boiled down to, and I was not comfortable with that. I was not. Absolutely not in a million years. I wanted an emotional connection before, you know, this sounds really weird and convoluted, especially coming from me. I want there to be an emotional connection, and if there is any sex in the relationship, I better put my statuses away on that. Excuse me a sec. I'm trying to detour any people from bugging me on Skype at the moment, because as much as I like some of my friends, especially those overseas, some of them can be a little overbearing. Back to the topic at hand. If I'm in a relationship, I want there to be an emotional connection because of my past, and even though I feel I have moved on from a great deal of my past, I have not completely overcome all of it. Hi, Sayaka. I tell people not to bug me on Skype, and I get bugged on Trillian instead. Woo! Give me a sec, making a video blog for YouTube. Blip, 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 blip. So, because of some of the stuff in my past that I have not yet overcome, there are certain triggers that will put me into a defensive position, because I am a naturally defensive person, which can come out as me being passive-aggressive, as I've been accused of being in the past. It's not that I'm passive-aggressive. I'm overly defensive that it looks like aggression. I'm not quite sure how to phrase that right, but I have a tendency to, when someone is accusing me of something, or I feel it's accusatory, I don't believe that it's true, because I know myself, and I really hate it when people try and assert a certain view of me as being an actual state of fact. So I get very defensive until, in my mind, I want to try and convince that person that that is not true, that it's not, and I get a little too passionate about it. So it's a flaw. I'm too defensive. But generally, when it comes to things that trigger any sort of PTSD response, I will coil up and close off, pretty much. I go into a corner and I stay there until I feel safe. Whether that be physically, mentally, or emotionally, that usually tends to be the question. But generally speaking, over the last 5 to 7 years or so, I haven't had any problems with any physical issues unless I've been down in Mississippi. That's a whole nother story. We'll not go there. So it's usually been the emotional or mental factor, and generally speaking, when I'm extremely overwhelmed, my sanity is not quite up to par. It's not that I'm crazy psycho or anything like that. It's just I really feel like I'm at the end of my rope half the time because I'm so overwhelmed. And, you know, sometimes the smallest little thing can set me off. Usually I like to have someone who's understanding and patient, though that's kind of far and few between. Not a lot of people are like that, because the way things work these days with the decline of moral values in the human species, people don't care about anybody else but themselves. It's a sad fact of life, but it is a very true one. And in every single era of humanity, selfishness and worrying about oneself is always an issue. However, I believe it's more of an issue in our generation since people don't respect each other anymore, much less themselves. They care about themselves enough to be selfish, but they don't care about themselves to be a decent human being in society, is the difference that I'm getting at. There's no honor or pride anymore in pretty much 90% of humanity that exists. And that's a really sad thing, because I hate it when I see somebody who has so much potential to be a good person or someone who can contribute a lot to themselves and others, and they don't utilize that, and they don't see it, and they're stubborn and mean and vindictive. It pisses me off half the time. I mean, there's so many people out there that I've met that have this potential to be a good person and, you know, really go above and beyond the abilities that they set for themselves. They don't see themselves as being capable, and so they leave themselves stunted. And it's very disheartening. But when it comes to relationships, getting back on topic here, you know, someone who has patience and understanding to, you know, I guess put up with me, is far and few between. I mean, hell, I'm 27 years old and I'm still single. And I don't see any chance of me getting into a relationship anywhere. I can't even imagine it. I literally, I can't imagine myself getting married, male or female. Probably never male, in that case, because I have not been able to ever have a romantic relationship with a man. I have tried a few times. It has not worked. There is, I guess, a permanent mental block on that, and there is nothing I can do about it. Sorry to any of those dudes, especially those of my friends that might have a crush on me. I cannot go there. Friends, family, like Suedo, brother, sister, you know, that's about it. Sorry, but I don't go there. And sadly, it's usually the creepy guys that come after me, like Mr. Vampire Man. That one's a hoot. We can get to that story if people actually ask me that. I won't actually get into that in this video. But I don't ever get a girl that falls for me. It sucks, you know? I guess I just never get out. I'm not the kind of person that goes gallivanting about and socializing in normal situations like going to bars or going to parties or, you know, the bowling alley or some such. You know, it's not my thing. I don't feel the need to go out and party or go out and drink. And I wouldn't be able to drink anyway because the first taste of liquor just makes me want to vomit. So, yeah, I don't drink. My dad ruined that for me. Because I used to be able to drink. In fact, I was a heavyweight. I stupidly challenged my Norwegian friend. That was a big mistake. Sorry to my Norwegian friend. I was a really seriously drunk dumbass that was way beyond the bounds of drunk. I can still remember, you know, I completely passed out. I had like 8 to 10 50-50 jelly shots, and I have no idea how many moonshine shots that I had in contest with this individual. I remember opening a large can of beer, and I took, I think, 2 swigs, and I was out. Poof! Gone. I remember being helped upstairs and laid down on one of the couches in the main area in between the two bedrooms in the upstairs area, and I kept waking up every now and then, and I remember calling out, "Baguettes, baguettes, baguettes." Oh, I was so stupid. Not to mention, I think I had to go to the bathroom and people saw me, and I'm like, oh my god. The horror stories. And I'm really red in the face. Wow. So, there's an embarrassing story. Yeah. But wow, I've really gotten off topic. And I think my winter asthma is kicking in to boot. In terms of a relationship, sex is not the first thing that ever comes about it. In fact, I'm extremely shy, despite my forwardness otherwise. You know, when it comes to actually someone says, okay, if you're ready, let's go. And I'm like, can I run away now? Yeah, I might be quite the pervert and have a very dirty mind. But when it comes to actually having to do the act, I'm like, yeah, no, can we not? But I'm so conflicted because I want to, but I'm like so fucking shy. I drive myself insane. And that was a cough drop, by the way. I do not actually have hard candy. I don't like hard candy. I don't like a lot of sweet stuff. It's weird. I used to, though. Anyway, I want to be able to explore sex, but first off, I don't have the opportunity. Secondly, I'm extremely shy, and that is a serious barrier that needs to be overcome. And I don't think there's anyone with any sort of patience to really deal with that. Part of the reason why sex is somewhat important, I see sex as important, but I don't see that as being the only thing that a relationship consists of. It never should be the only thing a relationship consists of. And when it comes to those who believe in saving themselves for marriage, while I respect their choice, I don't agree with that choice, because from my perspective, if I can't trust somebody with my body and all of myself, how am I going to be able to marry them and tolerate all of that if I can't trust them? Much less them trust me, or vice versa, and my ears ringing. But because of my past with it, if I can't trust somebody with my physical self, how am I going to be able to trust them with my heart or my soul, whatever consists of making a person a person? Because it's been my experience that, you know, if a person can't treat you right in one aspect of life, they're not going to treat you right in every aspect. It tends to be the case with abusers that if they can abuse something, they have the potential to abuse pretty much everything. For example, my dad and one guy that I have heard of who is connected to a middle school friend of mine, junior high actually, my dad has outright shot a dog in front of me multiple times. I was not happy with him. Neither was my cousin. We were both absolutely livid. He hates animals. My dad absolutely hates animals, especially cats. Someone like that, him with his alcoholism, his violence towards animals, and his tendency to fly off the handle at the drop of a hat, even worse than I do. I tend to have a temper. It used to be much worse when I was younger. I've really reined in on it quite a bit, but every now and then I still have issues with it, especially as of late. A lot of people have been hitting some serious landmines over the last year or so, and it's been very frustrating to deal with because I thought I had control over that, but it seems I don't. So I need to work with that. But, you know, I once read something on Facebook. It was some sort of quote of some sort. You know, if someone can... the pureness of a person's heart can be measured by their treatment towards animals. Generally speaking is what that was saying. And in this case, it happened to be a very true statement because my dad can be violent with animals and outright shoot them multiple times in front of anyone and everybody. And he doesn't give a flying flip. He doesn't regret it. He would do it over again. Over and over and over again. He sees nothing wrong with it. And it would explain why every time he was drunk, he has this tendency. If he was in a good mood when he got drunk, he would be very creepily clingy and touchy-feely and just way off. It's like, you know, I go and lock myself in my room. Regardless of the mood, I would, whether he was in a bad mood or a good mood before getting drunk. If he was getting drunk, I would lock myself in my room. But even more so when he was actually in a good mood. If there was no one else at the house. If there was other people at the house, I had no choice but to be exposed to it because he was calling me out like every 5 minutes for this, that, or the other. And, you know, it was rude to guests to lock myself in my room. And generally I felt a little bit safer with more people because a lot of the people he tended to invite over were people I actually did trust. For the most part. There were a couple of questionable characters that I have never fully trusted in the 16 years that I have been down there off and on. And for good cause. Some have packed their bags and hauled ass because of drugs, this, that, or the other, but that's beside the point. But he would give, even though I know he wouldn't, and he says he wouldn't, when he's in a good mood, when he gets drunk and he gets that touchy-feely, he gives off the raper vibe. He really does. That's the only way I can put it. And so, yeah, I did not feel comfortable with him. I felt more comfortable with him in that state than if he was in a bad mood when he got drunk, because then he would be looking to pick a fight. Yeah. And even though he's reined down on his aggression, his physical aggression, there is still that fear. And he has the potential to do that should he actually lose his mind. And in the case of my junior high school friend, her fiance or husband, whatever it is, shot a bird, which later died. My immediate response when I saw her post this as her status, my immediate response was, if he can be violent with a bird, what's to keep him from pretty much being violent in any other way, shape, or form? And usually that tends to be the case with a lot of domestic violence cases. If someone has the potential to, or if they actually do, be violent towards some other creature, this can actually be same can be said for actual inanimate objects as well, like walls or dressers or so on and so forth. They have that potential to that will spread to more and more and more things. And I really witnessed this a lot when it came to my grandmother and my step-grandfather, Bill, who thankfully passed away. I normally never want someone to die. I normally am never happy that someone dies, but in this case, I have to say I am very glad he died. He was an extremely violent person. He has fractured my grandmother's skull. He has hung me from the rafters of his wood shop because he got pissed at my uncle because my uncle wanted to spend time with me. My dad had to keep my grandfather occupied while my uncle actually cut me down with the machete. I had rope rash on my neck for about almost 2 months. It was really old rope. I had like slivers all in my neck of pieces of rope. I was on antibiotics because some of them got infected and stuff, and it was not nice. I don't know what kind of rope he used, but that was not a very good quality rope. There was another point where I had stayed with my grandmother and I slept in the bed with her for a night, and I had like slippers on or something like that. I was borrowing them from my grandmother, and I remember going back into her room to get my shoes to leave her slippers there. And I was coming out of the room. I went to one end of the hall before I was turning to go into the living room. I remember this big towering figure. I mean, he was like a giant. I swear to you. At the age I was then, I think this was when I was 11. Yeah, that was the time I got shot in the leg. He was like a freaking giant. I reached the end of the hallway and went to turn into the living room, and here he is, this big, towering, pissed off giant. He was huge. I swear to you. He was so freaking huge in that one instant in time. He was like 20 feet tall. I swear to you. I knew to fear for my life at that point. Every cell in my body was just screaming to get away. I remember running into the kitchen, and there was one of those freezers that actually is flat and it lays down on the ground and flips open like that. It was the freezer, and then my dad, and then my grandma Sandy. So there was like this little barrier that I hid behind my grandmother and my dad. And my grandmother was on the phone. My uncle was behind the counter in the kitchen making food. And my grandmother, she was talking on the phone. My dad was doing something, talking to my uncle, I believe. All of a sudden, I peek over the freezer, and I see him coming. I see my step-grandfather coming back, and he has a gun in his hand. And he went into the kitchen, and he pointed it at my uncle. And I can't remember what the argument was about or anything like that, but my uncle he put down the food, and he got up right up there at the barrel, and he was like, shoot me. You know, he's telling him to pull the trigger. And all of a sudden, my grandmother was like, hey, sorry, I gotta go. She hung up the phone. There was yelling going on between my dad, my uncle, and my grandfather. My grandmother is just freaking out. She couldn't get involved because she feared Bill. She was scared of him. And all of a sudden, in just a matter of just a couple of seconds, my grandfather flipped the gun around, grabbed the barrel, had the handle out. It was a revolver. I believe a .22. And he started clubbing my uncle. Just clubbing him. And he ended up getting a scar straight down the middle of his forehead. At that point, when the scuffle started and my dad jumped in, I went out the front door, across the yard, across the street, through a red ant hill, and behind a tree in the neighbor's yard. I was gone. In the time it took me to do this, somehow their scuffle made it outside. A shot went off, and I guess it ricocheted off the street and into my leg. I ended up getting shot by a ricochet bullet in the leg in my process to get across the street. Oddly enough, it was, let's see. This right here is my foot. It ended up getting me right here in the leg. I have a faint scar from that. It's been 16 years since then. But it got here. It didn't hit any sort of joint or any sort of major area or anything like that. So, even though it really, really hurt and it burned, it didn't actually stop me from walking or running. And I stayed behind that tree until the police arrived. Police in Mississippi are extremely dumb. They put Bill in jail for only one night for a scuffle that ended up getting a child shot and 2 other people injured because my dad was clubbed in the back of the head, was split and bleeding all down the neck, and my uncle's face is all bashed to hell and gone. And safe to say, after that one incident, I never went back to my grandmother's house, ever. I did not want to be around that guy. And then I think in 2003, 4, or 5, he died of a heart attack in either April or August. And I was happy. I was actually happy that somebody died. That's really mean of me, but yeah. So my grandmother was free, and I've asked her a couple of times, why didn't you get away from him? And her answer has been, I was scared of him. And even though, to me, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, I can't understand it, as I'm the type that if something was wrong, I run. If I'm in a situation like that, I'm going to run. Come hell or high water, whether I'm scared or not, I'm going to run. I couldn't understand it. And so, even now, it's still a bit of a mystery to me, because the way she says it, it almost sounded like an excuse. And while I can understand, yes, generally, she probably was scared of him. I would totally believe that in a heartbeat. But I find it really hard to accept that fear alone, even though this is true in many cases where fear does it's like Stockholm Syndrome. So, logically speaking, yes, I understand it. But emotionally speaking, I can't grasp that concept. But, so generally when anyone exerts any sort of, especially men, when they exert actual aggression, I will stay away from them. That is an automatic trigger. If there is aggression, I will hide in a corner. I will literally run and hide. I don't look like the type that will run and hide, but if I can avoid a conflict, I will. If I'm forced to fight, then you're looking at a wild animal. But generally speaking, I try not to fight. I run. Until I'm backed up in a corner, and then I will lash out. So that's usually always been the case. I don't go actually looking for fights. I try to avoid conflicts at all costs, especially ones of a physical nature. So while people might see me as passive-aggressive or just aggressive or having anger issues, I actually am not. I'm just very loud and passionate. So it's kind of difficult to get people to understand that, because people never have the patience to actually sit and listen to me, or let me speak. Generally, I have words shoved in my mouth, or I'm always interrupted and I can't get anything out, and, end of the day, nobody actually takes the time to sit down and listen to me, or sit down and, let me talk and learn about me a little bit to say, oh, hey, okay, you're not as bad as you look. Generally speaking, because I'm so boyish, and half the time I guess people find me intimidating. So, people get the wrong idea about me, and that bugs me a lot. but, you know, I can't really do anything about it. So, it does generally bug me that no one listens, you know. I spent half my life in foster care because of abuse, rape, neglect, and I was someone who had I had a lot of challenges that I faced, and no one gave me the time of day until I was 16 years old to say, oh, hey, you know, you're not as disturbed as everyone's making you out to be. You're a normal person trying to look for help. And I had a very unconventional way of looking for help, but that generally was the case. And when May 2002, a month after I turned 16, I did a bomb threat to my junior high. And it was brought on by the fact that I was always bullied in school. I was constantly bullied in school. You know, I'd be walking through the halls and people would be, you know, getting into my backpack while I'm walking down the hall. I shit you not. And, you know, sticking duct tape on my locker. The final straw was a piece of red duct tape on my locker saying, I'm a lesbian. And at the time, I was struggling with my sexuality. I was dating my very first boyfriend, Samuel Cohen. And he and I are still really good friends. Well, maybe not really good friends. We don't hardly talk anymore. But we are still friends. We're on very good terms. We dated on and off a few times. It just didn't work. And to be quite honest, he is actually, aside from Tom Kintz, he is actually the first guy outside of Tom Kintz and my stepfather that I actually trusted and was able to open up to. In fact, even though I wasn't ready for sex anywhere near at that age and point in my life, I was actually comfortable enough to lay with him naked. I could strip down and just lay in the same bed with him naked. I was okay with that. Whereas normally that would not be the case with anybody else in the world. So I was struggling with my sexuality very much so at that point. My stepfather had just died from cancer in November 2001. So it was 6-7 months after my dad died. Foster care, the system, the chance program and DSHS and CPS were all up in my business because I was struggling with my sexuality, because my dad just died. They were sitting there treating me for and as a disease, constantly questioning me, saying I'm going through a phase and telling me that it's wrong to like other girls. And at the time, I was in love with my best friend. At the time, she was my best friend. We are no longer friends. And probably for good reason, too. I actually hope there will be a day where I can at least say, hey, I'm thankful that you told me fuck you and you broke the chains that, you know, finally were holding me to you. But it allowed me to grow a lot after she left my life. And even though, you know, I hate her to a degree, I will always... this is going to sound really wacky, but I still love her, and I probably always will. I mean, first loves are something you don't quite ever get over, I guess. But that's beside the point. But I was just dealing with so much stress. I was put on Adderall for ADHD. I think I was on some other drug for depression. I had post-traumatic stress syndrome. I guess I still exhibit the traits thereof. And so I had a lot of issues with my life, and I didn't get along with some of my foster siblings. Two, primarily. Ellery and I, even though we're better now, I don't quite know what happened. I still really don't know what she thinks of me, honest to God, what she actually honestly thinks of me. But I think she had a bit of an ego problem and just didn't like me when we were younger. We still chat from time to time. I'm still very much in contact with this foster family. And Doreen and I, we didn't bitch, moan, or groan to each other. And she was the oldest of everyone in terms of kids. But it's not like we were seriously buddy-buddy or anything like that. Jasmine was a really young kid, and I tended to avoid kids. At that stage in my life, they scared me, and I didn't like them because I had this fear in the back of my mind that I would end up treating them like my parents treated me. And there were a couple of pass-through foster kids, Jessie Neal and Katrina something. Katrina, she was a head case. We had our moments where we got along, but more often than not, it was not really. Her mind, I don't know, she was messed up. And there was one point where I did get pulled into her shenanigans, and quickly realized that and pulled myself out. Now, in the case of Jessie Neal, we were like oil and water. We could not get along for shit. The very first night he ever showed up, we were in the middle of a camping trip, and he showed up. CPS dropped him off in the middle of our camping trip. I shit you not. The very first night, he was trying to get into my sleeping bag. I let my foster mom know this, and there was a CPS investigation, but I was the one blamed, in the wrong, because I was lying for attention, and he got away scot-free. My foster mom, I believe I've heard her say that she was on my side, and I strongly believe that she is, and was, but it was really disheartening to be the one at fault for that incident, quote unquote. And he and I, we fought like oil and water, and he ended up dating one of my friends named Stephanie. And there was one point where I was on dish duty, so I was doing dishes, and, you know, I had cooked dinner and everything like that. Because in that house, the way it worked is if you were, you know, on kitchen duty, you cooked the food, you did the dishes, you cleaned off the table, you set the table, blah, 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 blah. And I rather like that. I miss that. That's beside the point. So I was on dish duty, and he started launching off at me, just randomly insulting me and trying to really get a rise out of me. And I flipped it around and backfired on him and started trying to get a rise out of him instead. Well, it worked. But unfortunately, I was insulting my friend in the process. She wasn't a really close friend or anything like that. She wasn't a best bud. She was more like an acquaintance that I kind of talked to occasionally from time to time. She was a good person, but I used her to really piss off Jessie, and it worked. He came flying at me, fists in the air. He was ready to deck my ass. Me being the one doing dishes, and the dishwasher had been done, and I was putting dishes away, I had a nice stack of knives. And I took 2 of those steak knives. I skid across the wood floor to the entrance of the actual area to work with, where the sink was, oven, counter, and so on and so forth. It was one of those little bar type things. So it was a U shape, and then you had that little opening that you could get in, and then you had the pantry. I slid across. I had 2 knives. I held one to his groin and one to his neck as automatic defense. I didn't even think about this. It was just whoosh. Ellery was coming downstairs at this point in time, and she saw this. She saw him launch at me, and me take out the knives and point it at his groin and at his throat. And she went upstairs screaming bloody murder. And I remember Tom came down the stairs just roaring at the top of his lungs till he was red, purple even. I don't exactly remember what happened after that, but, you know, if someone's going to launch at me and attack me, I actually react instinctively rather than actually knowing what to do. I just react on instinct. And that's always been the case whenever physical abuse has been coming into play. About the time I was 12, 13 years old, I somehow worked in automatic defense that became a complete second nature. You know, if someone's going to fly at me, fists bared, I'm going to react without even thinking. That's just how it works. I can't control it. It's impulse instinct. And so, he did not last in that house. But I was having a lot of problems. Not only that, I was coming to a lot of changes because when I first moved in with this family, I never left my room. I literally never left my room. And I was in the smallest room in the house. I could literally reach out my arms and I'd be touching both walls. That's how wide my room was. It was probably about 8 feet long. It was 8 by 5 was my bedroom. Nice little cozy place, you know, it was good for me back then. I liked it, you know, but from time to time I kind of felt I was being persecuted or, you know, treated differently because I was struggling with my sexuality, and it was very open that I was, because nobody could keep a fucking secret. But it was like thunderstorms and hurricanes when I moved in, because Sylvia and I fought quite a bit, or argued quite a bit, and my base instinct was, I hated human touch. I hated human contact of any kind. It made my skin crawl, it made me sick to my stomach, and it made me aggressive. I did not like being touched. So when Sylvia's forcing hugs on me, my immediate reaction was to punch her, fight back. It really was the first instinct that came to mind, but for some reason I never could. Sylvia has this weird, strange power. She really does. And, you know, Sylvia was my saving grace. She really was. You know, she'd force hugs on me, and, you know, over the years, she'd use these, I guess because I used to be passive-aggressive, she used passive-aggressive counterattacks against me that, got me to reform, so to speak. A fault that I used to have was I didn't like to shower. Which is kind of weird because now I hate going a day without a shower, and that's kind of annoying from time to time because here I don't feel I can take a shower every day. Which is okay, and sometimes happens just by pure coincidence, and I don't even notice it because dealing with kids, you kind of can't shower every day. Stomach spasm, wow. And, so, I guess, you know, she would actually say, I don't want to hug you, you stink. Go take a shower and I'll give you a hug. Because I actually got to a point where I was starting to want hugs from time to time, and was seeking out affection of, you know, a parental nature, because I never really had that. So I actually got to a point where, you know, I was showering every other day. It was 5-minute showers was the limit. So, you know, when I first got there, I never came out of my room. I never talked to anybody. I never socialized or anything like that. by the time I left, you know, I was always going out on trips with them. I was a part of the house. You know, I'd eat and talk with everybody at dinner and lunch, and, you know, we go on boating and camping trips and generally have fun. And I was taught to, you know, how to crab. We used to go up to Anacortes all the time and go crabbing, which was super amounts of fun. I really, really, really miss it. I learned to go water tubing, and, you know, I learned so much in the 2.5 years that I was there. It, like, that was my childhood, was 15, 16, 17 years of age. That was my whole childhood, pretty much. I still keep in contact with Sylvia to this day. In fact, I called her on her birthday, and we talked for about 35 minutes or so. And I have a trip planned to go up there in the summer, you know, car repairs willing. And I plan to bring my friend along who's coming to the States, because I really want the two of them to meet. I think it would be great for them to meet. Sylvia would absolutely love her. And, you know, Caitlin will probably enjoy, you know, Sylvia's company. Sylvia is kind of the unconventional. She's very well-rounded, and she gets along with the younger generation despite her age. I don't even know her age. But she's got pure white, straight, soft silver hair. You know, it's Sylvia's old, but she's young, but she's got amazing hair. It's weird of me to say that, but dude. Sylvia is a very pretty person. I'm not saying that in any sort of sexual manner. I have no inclinations of that, of any kind, and even if I did, it would never work out. She is very Christian, very straight, and not the type to do that. I better just shut up. Regardless, you know, I still keep in contact with her. Unfortunately, Tom passed away. I don't know how many years it's been now, but he died of heart failure in front of Sylvia. And because of the crap that a couple of her daughters put her through, she lost her foster care license. I am still confident that I could have helped and prevented that, but I wasn't given the opportunity to help. The Kintz family is the best family I have ever had in my entire life, and I will always consider them my real family, because they are. You know, despite all of the mishaps and everything like that, Sylvia pretty much saved my life. When I did the bomb threat in 2002, there is a stipulation in the foster care system where a kid can be out of the home for only 14 days before their spot is filled by another kid. I was on day 14 and in court in my oranges and even shackled. And, you know, she probably doesn't see it as, you know, begging to get me back, but in my mind, she was like fighting really hard to get me back. She didn't want to lose me. I still want to ask her what was going through her mind then. And even though at that point it didn't really make an impact, well, it did, because I was really glad to be put back in her care. I was glad that I was given that chance to straighten up, if you will. I was given 10 days house arrest, 11 months probation, 24 hours community service. And since I went for a deferred disposition, it was taken off of my record, which somebody dropped the ball at some point, and it was not dropped off my record. However, it was downgraded from a B-class felony. But since it's in my juvenile records and more than 10 years passed, it doesn't really matter anymore. And I have not had any other infringements. That's actually the only major criminal offense that I have actually ever had, was that bomb threat. But that was the turning point in my life. looking back on it, that really was the turning point in my life. I started doing better in school. You know, I straightened out. I started doing better. Relations with my foster family got a lot better. Get this cough drop gone. And overall, pretty much my life was saved. If it had not been for that act and the actions that followed from my stepfamily, my stepmother primarily, I would probably be dead on the streets years ago from now. Well, years ago before now. You know, I probably would not have lived beyond the age of 2021. I don't think I would have been a good person and ended up in the right places, generally speaking. Because, you know, 2005 I got to go to Paris. 2009, 2010 I got to be in Norway. I went to Job Corps. You know, generally speaking, I was trying to do right by, I guess it was sort of a pay it forward sort of outlook. You know, I try and do the best I can to make up, you know, to somehow, the debt that I have to Sylvia is a debt that can never be repaid. You know, I do the best I can with her in mind because she saved my life. And, you know, the other part of it is I live my life, even though there are a lot of times when I want to just give up and, you know, I wish I could physically harm myself. I can't. There's some sort of block that doesn't allow me to actually draw my own blood. But when times get tough and I can't handle it and, you know, I wish I was dead or, you know, some such like that, every now and then I think to myself, you know, I'm living this life for those that I care for that have died. Because if I were to die at this point, what would I have to tell those that have passed on if there is such a thing as the afterlife? You know, so my thought process is I live my life in order to have stories to tell them when I join them. And in some form or fashion, there has to be an afterlife, as I have had the actual experience of my stepdad actually coming to me in a dream and checking up on me and the family. And after that one dream, and, you know, life had been generally improving at that point, and everyone was sort of going in an okay direction, he hasn't visited me since. But, you know, I kind of wonder if that was really the right thing for him to do, because after that, everything went to hell in a handbasket. My sister got pregnant with a guy that's like almost twice her age. Lost a kid. My younger stepbrother is a violent maniac who threatened his girlfriend and his child. My older brother is a level 2 sex offender who has 2 kids with 2 different women, one of which was argued over being actually my cousin's son, which I guess that's still a dispute every now and then. I have no fucking idea. I don't care anymore. He's dropped off the map, and I once actually got the chance before my niece was born to actually ask him, why did you do what you did when I was 12, 13 years old, before the first dependency was even closed? He got to me, my younger brother, which he'll never admit. My younger brother will never admit. He's got his pride. He's always been an egomaniac. He is a narcissist. And when he was getting to me, he was using my sister as leverage. And I guess when I was shipped to Mississippi, and even beforehand, he was still getting to my sister anyway. At that point, I had been trying to protect my sister, even though I don't like my sister. I never have. And because of him, we ended up in foster care again, while my dad was terminally ill. My stepdad, who I consider my real dad. He's raised me since I was generally about 2 years old. So that and my step family has been extremely vindictive and attacking my sister, attacking my mother, and using me as a pawn in their little scheme to hurt my mother and my sister. And I finally wrote a 12-page letter to that whole family, even the good people. It wasn't fair to the good members of that family that I did this. However, that family tends to chat a lot. And if even the good person knew, the information still would have leaked. So I wrote that family off. So after that dream with my dad, you know, everything went to hell in a handbasket years later. And I'm surprised he hasn't really checked in. Because, you know, and all of this started because my dad died. My stepfamily doesn't believe that my mother was ever good enough for him. My stepbrother, my younger stepbrother, does not acknowledge my mother as mom at all. Absolutely hates her guts and blames her for a lot of the issues that my dad suffered through. He has a lot of unresolved anger issues. And my stepdad was the kind of person that everybody relied on. He was the youngest child. Out of all of him and his siblings, he was the youngest. But he was the one who was relied upon the most as the most reliable, kindest, you know, most level-headed individual of the family. So everyone chained themselves to him as a pillar of strength. And when that was lost and, you know, that pillar crushed, everything just went to hell in a handbasket and nobody has been able to get over it except for me, it feels like. It feels like. I don't know if that's the case, but that's what it feels like, is I'm the only one that's actually gotten over his death, and I think that's why he came to me in a dream to ask how everyone else was doing. Even though he was my stepdad, and even though he didn't agree with my lifestyle choice at the time, I came out to him as bisexual while he was on his deathbed. He actually flat outright told me, I don't agree with that choice, but there's nothing I can do to change it. But I still love you regardless. Which, I accept that. Primarily because he was on his deathbed, I accept that, and I will never not accept that. You know, even though if he was to live, you know, he probably would have tried to sway me in a different direction, which probably never would have worked. I'm glad it played out the way it did. Unfortunately, as unfortunate as it might be, you know, there was nothing that could really be done, but I accept that because, you know, he was honest with me, and that's more than I could ask for. But my stepdad and I don't know what it was, but I really feel that even though I was a bit of a troublemaker and, you know, behaviorally challenged and everything like that, that he and I had this special connection that I did not have with any other member of my family. And it's really weird because when I was younger, I was the troublemaker. I used to fight with my younger stepbrother. We were like cats and dogs. We never got along. In fact, there was actually one point where, because my younger stepbrother and I never got along, we were actually handcuffed together for a couple of days until we were forced to get along. We were not actually released until we calmed down and actually got along, which didn't last very long, but that was I actually don't see that as a bad punishment, despite how bad it might sound. We were forced together. So going to the bathroom was kind of interesting. I won't go there. But, you know, despite all of the troubles and the tribulations and so on and so forth, he learned from his mistakes. That's the thing about him being a parent. He learned from his mistakes, and he did better whereas neither of my biological parents ever did or can. And, you know, even now I feel that he and I had a special sort of bond or connection that did not exist with anybody else in the family. And in a way, I felt that he understood me most. And, you know, when I was a kid, my younger brother and I were serious troublemakers, always getting into trouble. And my younger sister and my older brother were the perfect proteges. You know, my older brother was getting, you know, straight A's in school. He was always listening and obeying the rules. And my younger sister was the baby that was always doted on. That's how it worked. And so, you know, my brother and I are always getting into trouble and everything like that. And yet here in, you know, the adult life, while I am not economically successful, I believe that I am the most grown up of the group. I am the most mentally put together. I have made the most progress maturity-wise. And while I economically have nothing to show for myself, I live in a tiny little trailer, you know, on somebody else's property as a live-in nanny for room and board. You know, I'm not living the life, but I am me. And I have common sense. I do see right from wrong. I try to be a very good person to others. And I try to learn from my mistakes. Doesn't mean that I am perfect, but I try. However, you know, my younger brother, on the other hand, while he is not morally and mature, you know, mentally and emotionally, he is not a good person. He is economically very set. He has a good job. He's got the good looks. You know, he's got a good place to live. He lives for himself and so on and so forth, but he's not a very good person at heart. My older brother, who was the major protege of the family, quit school. He's a level 2 sex offender and homeless, living off the map somewhere. I don't even think he's registered like he's supposed to be. And my younger sister, who is the baby that was always doted on, she is a gross, disgusting slob, still living with my mother, and can't hold a job to save her life. Smokes like a chimney, and she is extremely disgusting, lives in her own filth, moldy dishes. That was really weird. Something just like totally moved here. Okay, pocket knife. So it's really weird. The troublemakers turned out to be okay, sort of. And the proteges turned into worthless slobs. It's funny how that worked out. And I think my dad sort of understood that that was happening or going to happen, and so I feel that's why he came to me, because I have actually specifically asked all of my siblings, have you ever dreamt of Dad? And none of them have. And so I think, you know, despite all of the conflict I had with my stepdad growing up, he trusted me. And I still think he does. It's hard to explain that, really. But I think the general basis is, you know, I'm a complete 180 from who I used to be, and so is everybody else. It's literally like places were traded. I have no other way to really put it or understand it or anything, you know. The two troublemakers, one turned out to be economically sound, the other one turned out to be morally sound. while the other two kind of went to hell in a handbasket, and they were former prodigies. Oh, and my sister, she never finished school. She quit in the 8th grade. Just barely passed her GED test. Like 7 years later. I got out of school early. I graduated early because I couldn't tolerate being in school anymore because it was boring. I knew everything. I was second top of my class. Had I had a higher math score, I would have been the valedictorian of my class in my sophomore year. So, my main problem when it came to school was I was bored. It was not interesting. It wasn't. I would pass my test with flying colors, but I never did the homework, which was like 90% of my grade. So even though I had failing grades, I'm not stupid. You know, it's hard to kind of explain that to people because education is everything, and that kind of makes it difficult for me getting a job sometimes because I don't have the requirements that they want. But the thing is I know I'm a fast learner. I adjust extremely quickly. I have a very high adjustment rate. And I learn quickly. In fact, hell, working at McDonald's might be a simple job, yet not a simple job, and it's not. I, within the second and third time that I had worked for McDonald's at 2 different other branches, I was almost to manager status, but because of insinuating circumstances with my domestic life, I never could actually take the promotion. But especially at the Westgate McDonald's, they would probably hire me again in a heartbeat, so long as Mark is still the store owner. But my employers have been sad to see me go, though my employer at the fruit stand especially has always hated to see me go. I was head cashier. So, I can do anything. I can, but the problem lies in my motivation. That's what always gets me, is if I'm not motivated, I'm not going to do it. But if I'm motivated, hell yeah, I'm going to give like 1000%. I'll kill myself over it. And, that's generally how it worked, is I would go gung-ho at the beginning and like burn myself out. But, it's weird. There are a lot of people out there that don't give me the time of day, that don't give me the credit, that, think I'm just an absolute worthless piece of crap. And, more often than not, that's usually my frame of mind, because it's been a constant throughout my entire life. It's hard to think otherwise. But generally, when it gets to the heart of it, I do know that I am a good person. I am a smart person. I can do whatever I set my mind to. It's just I lack the motivation for most things, and the things that I am motivated and interested in, I'm denied. So, and, I'm a curious person by nature, so there's a lot of things that I am interested in and don't have the education for, can't get the education for, so I don't have the prereqs to do for fun, or the money to start with to do, because I'd love to be a storm chaser. I'd really love to work with weather, and so on and so forth, but to be a meteorologist, you have to go through calculus, trigonometry, physics, and calculus. And I am not very math inclined. As smart as I am, math has never been my strong point. I have never been allowed to attempt to learn higher math because people always tell me I need to go through pre-alg first. Well, I've taken pre-alg 5 times. The best grade I have ever gotten from pre-algebra is a C-. If I had not had the minus and it was just a plain C, I would have been allowed to go to the higher math class, but stubborn asses wouldn't let me slide. So I have never had the ability to attempt higher math, which I hear is vastly different from regular basic math and algebra. So I don't know how good I would do with higher math, but I'm never going to get the chance to find out. I don't have the motivation to study it because I don't like math, because I've had bad experiences with it. But the time that I passed it with a C-, I had an extremely good teacher that made it very easy to understand, made it interesting to understand. Unfortunately, that teacher passed away from, of all things, cancer. He was a really good teacher. He really was. So, you know, but I have extremely high English skills. Even for a native English speaker, I have a really good vocabulary, and there are lots of people that have commented on it. In fact, that's one of my foster mom's favorite aspects about me. She has said time and time again, "I love your vocabulary. Your vocabulary is extremely colorful," she says. So, you know, there are times where I do see the true value in what I have to offer, but, you know, so much of the world doesn't see it that I often get hung up on that. And, you know, sometimes I wish that wasn't the case, but it's kind of hard not to get hung up on it because it affects my actual life, especially economically. You know, I can't get a job. Nobody will give me the time of day because primarily my looks. Not to mention, I have a half missing front tooth. I don't have the $800 fucking dollars to get it fixed. There's plenty of other issues, like, you know, I try and dress, you know, nicely. I dress in the best that I have, which maybe isn't, you know, the hundreds of dollars that people want me to spend on a freaking, you know, interview suit of some kind or some dress or blouse. And sad to say, I will not wear dresses or skirts. I draw the line. I will wear slacks, nice slacks, feminine slacks, and a blouse. That is about as fancy as I will get. Though, in the wedding, in my friend's wedding that I attended last year, even though I really dressed very feminine and in slacks and a blouse, I looked like a blimp. I looked like a fucking blimp. Oh my god. Yeah. So, you know, I trim up, I clean while, you know, I'm a stickler for hygiene. And, you know, despite all of that, people do not give me the time of day. I don't know what it is about me, but people don't care. They don't. And it's extremely hard to get people to see or to, you know, sit there and give me the time of day or to give me the benefit of the doubt to even, you know, let me try. Nobody does it, and it's difficult to deal with. I'm 27 years old and I'm still living in a freaking trailer and nobody will give me the time of day no matter how hard I try. I will try my best, above my best. I will go above and beyond what I need to do in order to achieve a goal, and I'm treated like shit. I am not given any sort of consideration at all, and more often than not, I have faced a lot of situations where my efforts have never been appreciated or acknowledged. Commonplace being with my mother. Doesn't give me the time of day. She doesn't acknowledge anything I do, even though she runs me like a freaking pack horse. I've got multiple skills to offer. Despite being a woman, I physically, I'm extremely tomboyish. I have the masculine looks more often than not. But I have a lot of skills. I have a very wide skill set. I can do maintenance. I can do landscaping. I can do labor. I can actually do manual labor. There is no way that I can't. Primarily, I learned a lot of this in my childhood. My dad, we would always go camping. I am a survivalist. I can live in the wild if I was, push comes to shove. So I know how to, make something out of nothing, pretty much. I duct tape has been my solvent for a lot of things. If you ask my friend Samantha, she will tell you the many stories I've had about duct tape. And with this trailer here, I have had to do a few repairs, and I have officially been called, oh, hey, you've been initiated into the Ragneck Club, because I have 2 giant trees, actual full-size, small trees, laying across the top of the trailer holding a tarp down because I don't actually have any rope. I'm making do with the best that I've got. I have heavy rocks in plastic bags tied to loops at the other side of the tarp to keep it from, hanging down, to keep it from flying up. But, I know how to work power tools. I know how to work yard work tools. Like I said, I can do landscaping. I was actually trained in union painting and Job Corps. I do know how to do some carpentry. I am not an expert in carpentry. I will never claim to be an expert. But I do find carpentry very interesting. I have made some of my own stuff. I have made bookcases, desks. I have repaired various things. I'm very good with electronics. That started early, and that is a slight hobby of mine. Was working with electronics, and I'm very, very confident. I get into a zone, and it's like a puzzle. It really is. It's like a puzzle. You take it apart, and you sit there and learn how it works, and then you put it back together, and you have this sense of accomplishment because hey, you took it apart, you messed it up, and you put it back together, and it works. Woohoo! You have this big sense of accomplishment. When I was younger, I got into electronics. I don't know if this spurs from my paternal side of the family, where everyone has been electricians of some sort. My biological grandfather on my dad's side was an oil field electrician. He unfortunately died of a gas field explosion. My dad never got to know him, but my dad ended up becoming an electrician himself. He's worked in oil field electronics. He's worked on planes in the military. I've heard so many stories. I've seen so many pictures, that back up these stories and everything like that. And he's got a very long military history. So I guess electronics kind of runs in the blood, as much as I wanted to deny my biological side of the family, on my paternal side. But it started out when I was younger. 13, 14 years old, I was working with cassette players, VCRs, and stuff like that. Anytime any sort of trouble happened with those, I would be the one to fix them. I would fix stereos, VCRs, cassette players. Eventually it evolved into CD players, more advanced stereos, boom boxes. And then later it got into the field of computers. When I was about 15, 16 years old. I'm having stomach spasms, sorry. So, I started working with computers, and I became hooked. When I started working with computers, I was absolutely hooked. I have a very old custom-built computer that I made, 10 years ago. 10 years ago. It doesn't work anymore. It's extremely outdated, and a lot of the parts are now useless. However, I think I still have that computer somewhere in possession. I took out the hard drives and I brought them back with me, and I think the tower is still down in Mississippi, but that was my biggest electronic accomplishment thus far. I haven't had the ability to work on a lot of the more advanced computers like the one that I have now, which I bought almost a year ago. It is a Windows 7 computer. It's got, oh, let's see what the specs are. I think I have like 8 gigabytes RAM, terabyte hard drive. Properties. Yeah, I have a terabyte hard drive. Let's minimize that. Where is it? AMD processor, HD graphics at 2.20 gigahertz, 8 gigabytes of RAM, 64-bit operating system. I don't understand the Windows Experience Index. I'll have to look that up. But generally, this is a actually decently very good computer that I got for under $600. Yay for Best Buy. I have installed an additional 3 terabyte hard drive in here, and I've looked at the components of this computer, but I haven't actually had the need to play with it, so I haven't. Though, recently, I actually had a very serious problem with a Luhe virus. It wasn't an actual Luhe virus, thank God. It never showed up as such, but by a miraculous stroke of luck, I was actually able to rid myself of this virus that was bringing Trojans onto my computer, and I went through about a 4-day period of trying to find, isolate, and get rid of this virus, which I actually finally managed to do. It was brought on by a strange, what looked like an official Windows program codec pack for the Windows Media Player and Media Player Classic. Turned out it was a piece of crap. It brought a virus on, which was bringing more viruses on. I had a hard time trying to isolate it because the file names that it was coming up as did not actually exist in the computer, so I actually had to go and regedit. Regedit. I pretty much had to go into the registry and play with that. And then find the actual codec program and get rid of it, which was a little difficult because it didn't show up on the control panel. But I finally managed to get rid of it. I have been virus-free for a week. Well, wait, it's June now. Yes, a week, because it was the 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th. So it was about a 4 or 5 day span that I was dealing with it. I don't think I dealt with it on the 27th, but I was pretty much... No, yes, I did. So I dealt with it for about 4 or 5 days. And managed to finally get rid of it, and I haven't had a single problem since. Thank God. I am definitely more hardware inclined than I am software inclined. Software, I am a bit of a dumbass. I will freely admit that. I'm more than willing to learn, and, you know, I can learn it as long as I see it done and can repeat. But generally speaking, I am more the hardware type than I am the software type. I have helped build and repair houses. I've done a lot of landscaping. I used to work at a fruit stand, not just as a head cashier, but when my 2 co-workers would skip out and be dumbasses, I was also working backhaul and doing stocking and, you know, going back and forth between the front and the coolers in the back, lifting 50-pound boxes to and fro, you know, stocking up supplies in between customers. I worked 10 hours a day, 50 hours a week. I had 2 days off. I was getting $1,200 to $1,400 a month. the first time I was getting $1,200 a month. The second time I worked there, I actually had a $10 raise, which equated to a $1,400 a month wage. So I was getting $70 an hour by the end of it. And this was in Mississippi, so cost of living was less, minimum wage was less. Not to mention, we actually had the customer standard of, when it came to customers that were either disabled or elderly, we would actually carry their purchase out to their car for them, which a lot of the customers really enjoyed. I actually kind of missed that. My customer service record there is amazing. I'm constantly getting told that, customers are asking about me, so on and so forth. I had a lot of regulars, a lot of good times. That was, I actually really enjoyed that job. Sad to leave it. It was a very demanding job, but I did it, and despite the downsides, I really enjoyed the job, and I miss it. Because I pretty much had no breaks. The place was so busy, and it was primarily just the boss and I the last time around. So there was a lot on our shoulders that we had to do. Me being head cashier and stalker, occasionally there was another lady there that would help out with the stocking, but not very often. So it was usually the boss and I, and he would do a lot of the stocking. He would also go through the inventory, and on Monday and Thursdays, he would go out to Mobile, Alabama, and, restock for our supply, and that would take all day. And then when it came to, refilling sweet potatoes, that would be every 2 weeks. That would be a very big project that would take hours to do, because we would have to rotate out the old, and then we have to, do our little sale baskets of, $5 a basket for, 20 pounds of potatoes. Actually, it was $5.95. The price had to go up on them. And then, put everything on the shelf, and it wasn't organized, but it had to be organized just enough so it didn't look like a hellacious mess. So, you had to sit there and line them up, and then, as the stack got higher to about, 2 feet high on the counter, it had to be made to be stackable, even though these are not uniform potatoes. But my most favorite part of that job was the customers, actually. Despite the fact that there were some customers that were unruly or out of line. Primarily around Christmas was when we get the really serious wackos. One of which I nearly had to call the police on. The difference between red sweet potatoes and white sweet potatoes, it was a 20-cent difference, 20 to 40-cent difference, because the red sweet potatoes at the time were 39 cents a pound, or 3 pounds for $1. And the white sweet potatoes were only 79 cents a pound. And there was no change in that. White sweet potatoes were 79 cents a pound regardless. Didn't matter if you actually had the 1 pound for $1 or anything like that, or 3 pounds for $1. And he asked me, what's the price of the white sweet potatoes? I knew this by memory, and I said they're 79 cents a pound. So he's trying to mix the bag up with red and white sweet potatoes and saying that they're the same price. And I was like, no, sir, I'm sorry, but I don't know if you misheard me, but the price of white sweet potatoes is 79 cents a pound, and the red sweet potatoes are 39 cents a pound, 3 pounds for $1. And he started getting very huffy and snippy and uppity, and I'm just like, sir, can you please calm down? And, the situation was kind of starting to escalate, and there were other customers there that were actually trying to jump in and help me out in trying to calm this individual down. And he just kept escalating and escalating and escalating, and finally I just had to say, you're gonna have to take it up with the boss. And I called the boss. He came in and said, I had actually gotten to the point, I was like, you either need to calm down, sir, or you need to leave the premises. And the boss was saying the same thing, that he either needed to calm down or get out. And it got to a point where a customer was actually in the process of calling 911 because this was escalating so bad. And, you know, despite how calm I seemed on the outside, I was actually really freaking out on the inside. I was seriously freaking out. He was beginning to scare me. He really was. Woo. My heart was beating a million miles a minute, and I was surprised that I was actually able to keep my composure in that situation. That is the toughest situation that I have been in that particular job, and I surprisingly made it through. The boss actually said, hey, you did a fantastic job. I was like, oh my god. You know, I'm sitting there like, after we actually managed to finally get the individual to leave the store, you know, the customers were coming up to me saying, you did a great job, you did all you could. You just, you know, now you can kind of take a step back and kind of calm down a little, because I can tell you're a little frazzled, because a couple of the customers that were in there happened to be a couple of the regulars who knew me. So I was like, yeah, I kind of need to step back just a bit. And the boss was like, okay, I'll take the counter for a few minutes while you kind of go back and calm down a little bit, because I was really wired. Just thinking about it. But some of the other difficult customers happen to be the Mexicans, primarily illegal immigrants that would come in and speaking Spanish. I was switched around from school to school so much that I never had the luxury of learning a second language, so I do not know a lick of Spanish. I know how to say, you know, 1, 2, 3, and, you know, I can, you know, count to 3 in Spanish, and I know yes and no. Other than that, I don't know anything about Spanish, so it was very interesting. But thankfully, I had the experience of going to France and to Norway, and so I can read body language decently well, and I can try and put together certain things that I can sort of understand, but can't. The frustrating thing was when one of those customers got like, $40, $50 worth of produce and paid nothing but coins. They had one of those purple and gold Crown Royal fabric bags filled with coins that they just went dump on the counter. It took forever to count. $40 to $50 worth of produce in coins. Primarily, about 30% of it was pennies. That was very frustrating. But currency is currency. You gotta take what you get. And, you know, in some instances it was okay because I had been running out of certain coins in the till. But other coins, it got to the point where it didn't fit. I'd actually have to cut it off and had to put it down below in the box below and trade out for bills. But, you know, working a customer service job does have, you know, its pros and cons, but generally I enjoyed the job. And the customers were my favorite part of it. It made the day fly because everyone was nice, you know, and, you know, for the most part, everyone was nice, and I had a lot of regulars that I got to know and become friends with. You know, it was a great job. It was. But, you know, working fast food, I don't want to ever work fast food again. But, you know, if I'm left with absolutely no other alternative, I will. But for the most part, I don't want to. It's not a bad job, and it's a nice fast-paced job where, I'm always keeping busy, I hate to sit around twiddling my thumbs. I hate it. I can't stand it. If I'm ever at a point in any sort of job that I'm doing where I'm just sitting around twiddling my thumbs wondering what the fuck to do next, I will actually go around and ask, hey, is there something that needs to be done? Because I need something to do. But the problem is because of my large chest size, I have back pains, I have sciatic nerve issues, which cause me to have balloons for hands sometimes. And when I was working McDonald's this last time around, I was always waking up with swollen arms and hands that I could not feel and that hurt extremely bad. And I would feel like I'd had rocks in my wrist and I actually could not make a fist with my hand. In fact, even now in my everyday life, when I'm not having that balloon issue in my hands, when I make a fist, I can just ever so slightly feel like I do have rocks in my wrists. I believe I do have carpal tunnel as well. However, I have always been denied medical in order to be able to fix these issues, and I'm always given the excuse, your condition's not severe enough. And when I actually went through the nerve conduction test, the doctor was actually freaking out because it is severe enough, but, what does DSA just care? So, it's weird to say this, but the fruit stand job was not as physically demanding as working fast food, like McDonald's. Working fast food places like McDonald's is actually extremely physically demanding, and not enough people actually understand that fact. And I enjoy a decently paced or fast-paced environment where I'm always keeping busy, but I don't want it to come at the expense of always being in pain. I'm really tired of being in pain and not getting help for it. And it's something I'll do if it's an absolute necessity, but I would rather not until I am able to fix the medical issues, the two main medical issues that I have with the carpal tunnel and my large chest that weighs down on my back. I actually almost faced kidney failure at one point because of all of the anti-inflammatories that I was taking. My doctor actually said, absolutely no anti-inflammatories, no ibuprofen of any kind, no anti-inflammatories at all. And I was put on muscle relaxants and Vicodin, which I don't like taking because it makes me feel sick. But that was because I was actually facing kidney failure. I actually had to go in for an A1C every single month to check my kidneys. So that kind of got a little bit scary, and it, made me realize that this is a more serious issue than I first thought, because it's not just affecting my back and, all of the muscles there and giving me migraines. It's actually forcing me to practically kill myself because of the pills. I hate taking pills. I hate medication. I want to be done with them. Thankfully, I have no problems with addictions. I have never had a single problem with addictions. I can actually confidently say I've never done drugs. I am the only non-smoker in my family. I am not an alcoholic. I am not dependent on drugs. I try not to take medications unless I am forced to, no other choice, that I cannot actually stand the pain. In terms of the muscle relaxant, I try not to take it. It pretty much knocks me out. I don't like it. About the only thing I do take on a regular basis is vitamin B12. And that's because I was born with a condition called the Raynaud syndrome. I have circulatory issues where vibrating machinery can be a cause to trigger these vasospastic attacks. Being in an environment with smokers can cause it. Stress can cause it. I get these vasospastic attacks where my circulatory veins in my extremities, my hands, my feet, sometimes my nose and my ears, will actually close off and turn into ice cubes. It could be 80 degrees and I will actually turn into an ice cube in the middle of one of these attacks. And from time to time, I take Signum, women's health, but not very often. I try not to get too involved with vitamins other than B12. But with this Raynaud's syndrome, it's getting worse with age. I was diagnosed with the phenomenon version, which is not associated with other sort of neurological or circulatory diseases. But primarily, there's 3 stages of a vasospastic attack. The first stage is when the circulatory veins close and no blood can actually flow to the extremities. You will turn colors. You can, like, go chameleon. You get, like, speckled all over the skin. I call it going chameleon. Some more extreme cases can actually see, a solid line where, from that line up, you will actually turn blue. I kid you not. You can actually research this. It depends on the severity of the case, but you can turn colors. It's no joke. Most people who do have the Raynaud's syndrome are more susceptible to hypothermia. I generally run a lower temperature than most people. Most people are at 98.6 Fahrenheit. I am generally about 97.5 Fahrenheit. That is usually my normal temperature. I tend to have issues with low blood pressure, which hasn't been the case lately. I guess that's because of cardiovascular issues I've been having, but I'm not really worried about that at this point. The second stage of a vasospastic attack is when you actually freeze in the extremities, and while you're actually either turning colors or you go white, you go solid white, you lose feeling. It can actually sometimes hurt because it's so cold. You can't feel anything. It can get very difficult to work with menial tasks that really require detailed finesse with the hands. And the third stage is when the circulatory veins open up, the blood flows back in, your hands will turn red, and they will get very warm, and in some more severe cases, you will actually get painful throbbing. That's usually how the vasospastic attacks work. Alcohol, nicotine, stress, natural environment, climate, and working environment, depending on if you're working with vibrating machinery, vibrating tools of any kind. These are usually the triggers for a vasospastic attack. In my case, now that I've actually removed myself from my mother and that household, my mother and my sister smoke, and my sister chain smokes. Even though I kept myself in my room or outside most of the time, I was still exposed to the nicotine. That used to be a lot of it. I had a lot of stress there as well. That contributed, and because I was doing a lot of yard work with a broken lawnmower, of all things, vibrating lawnmower, there you go. And now that I am out of that environment, I don't have near as much stress, but I still do have some amount of stress. But I am not in an environment with any sort of smoking, any sort of drinking. None of that exists in my life. I don't deal with vibrating machinery too much. I do deal with a lawnmower, and all lawnmowers are going to vibrate at some point or another. That's just how it works. I can usually tolerate that for a short amount of time. But if I'm like doing it for, 6 to 8 hours a day, then it can become a bit of a hindrance. And while my Raynaud's is getting worse with age, I have yet to actually have a serious case. As long as I keep moving, as long as I'm always constantly moving, I actually don't tend to have an issue. So generally speaking, I don't ever want to do desk jobs. I actually want to keep moving and, be active. I actually like being active. Paperwork has never been my thing anyway. I am very explorative and curious by nature. Oh, and I think I'm breaking my video blog record. It is 1 minute 59, 20 seconds. Wait, 1 minute? 1 hour. Sorry. Wow. 1 hour, 59 minutes, 26 seconds, 28 seconds, 29. So, anyway. So I don't have as much issues, but it is getting more severe as, you know, time passes. It is more debilitating. It's more painful. There is no cure for it. There are treatments for it, but there is no cure. I guess there's research being done. I haven't been able to actually find a lot of definitive information in terms of treatment plans or possible works on cures. I have done so much research on it. Primarily because since I was born with it, I was not aware of my condition until about my late teen years, because I was never, you know, told very often, hey, you have this condition. So I never, and because it's a condition that most people have never really heard of, and it's interesting to spell, I haven't, you know, it was not actually at the forefront of my mind. I was not consciously aware of it until my late teen years. And I have actually had a case of hypothermia at one point, which was a very interesting experience, not a very pleasant one. And because of my curious nature, I did not freak out about it. I was actually very curious about the experience. When it initiated, I was locked outside my my place of, you know, living situation. At that point in time, I'm kind of getting bad with the vocabulary. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. My living situation was extremely unstable at that point, and I had actually been locked out. I had to go to the hospital previously because I had actually fallen from about 7 feet up, and I seriously injured my leg, and I ended up passing out. And I guess that was the start of my vasovagal syncope. But I was forced to walk home from the hospital. It wasn't very far, thankfully, but I was forced to walk home with an injured leg at, 3 o'clock in the morning. I was locked outside of the premises, and I was afraid of waking anybody up to let me into the house. I didn't know if anyone was going to wake up, so I didn't bother, attempting to wake anybody up. I was never given a key. There's a few insinuating circumstances with that particular time period in my life. So I sat out and was petting the cats, and it's middle of February in Washington State, and it's pretty cold. So here I am, 3 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of February, stuck outside, and no protection other than the clothes I had on. I was not even actually dressed in a jacket. I had no protection whatsoever. Probably about hour and a half later, after I had actually stopped moving, walking kept me warm. When I stopped walking and came to a halt, sat down and started playing with the cats, that's when I made the mistake. About an hour and a half later, I, had been shivering. I was really, really cold, and, I'm sitting there rocking back and forth, and I'm shivering, normal response when you're cold, you shiver. And I'm actually shivering literally from the inside out. I could actually feel all of my muscles quivering from the inside to the outside of my body. Which I actually generally hate it when that happens, because that hurts. All of a sudden, my body just stopped. Everything just stopped. I can't explain it any better than that, but I stopped shivering. My muscles stopped moving. you know, I could still get up and move around, you know, just like anybody else, but it was just like that shiver, that shivering that was saying, you know, hey, try and warm up, you know, that natural bodily response to try and keep the core of your body warm stopped. It was a freaky experience, but I was curious. I was thinking to myself, I was like, well, this is weird, you know, but then in the back of my mind, I knew something wasn't right because I had heard experiences on like the Discovery Channel or Animal Planet of experiences of hypothermia, you know, people in the mountains getting hypothermia, blah, 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 blah. I've even heard stories from, you know, the police officers and Coast Guards out at the coast, because I used to live at the ocean, and because this is the Pacific Ocean in the northwest corner of the United States, hypothermia is a very common factor for people who get caught by riptides and dragged out to sea. That is a very common thing. So my dare officer often told me of experiences, you know, and unfortunately he died during a surf and rescue. But I am the type of person that a lot of this useless information actually tends to stick in my head, and somehow I come across experiences that actually bring this all back to light and make a whole lot more sense in the heat of the moment. And so, you know, while I'm generally curious as to why I stopped shivering, and, you know, this new experience of, oh, hey, I don't feel cold anymore. My body's not shivering. This is a weird sensation because I am not used to this. It literally just stopped. It didn't fade out like as you get warmer, the shivering kind of lessens and lessens and lessens and then stops. It was just straight out, it stopped. There was no decrease, there was no increase, there was nothing. It just stopped. It was like pulling the plug on a light. It's just 1 minute it's on, next minute it's off. But in the back of my mind, I knew something wasn't right. I was like, this is not good. This is bad. But I was too curious in the experience, and, you know, something told me I needed to get up and move. So here I am, you know, hopping around the yard. I'm literally hopping, bunny hop, but around the yard and trying to move and doing cartwheels. And, you know, I'm trying to do something to try and get my body to warm back up with, you know, muscle friction and so on and so forth. And it wasn't working. And I finally noticed a propane powered barbecue nearby. And I fired that sucker on and laid on top of it, and finally got to a point where I was shivering again. At which point it got to be about 8 o'clock in the morning, and, you know, the teenage boy who was living in the house was up and getting ready for school, and finally let me in the house. To which I promptly went to bed, covered up. I didn't get out of my clothes or anything. I just covered up and I went to bed until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So, that was a pretty interesting experience. I have this really bad habit. I am sometimes a little too curious for my own good. When I come across something new, I am extremely curious and want to know how it works, or, you know, want to know why it does that, why it does this. You know, I get extremely curious. One of my beliefs, or my opinions, is that curiosity is what develops individuality, because as long as you keep yourself curious to, you know, ways of life, you leave yourself open to the chance of growing as a person, learning new things, discovering a lot of things that, you know, a lot of people don't. And I've tended to notice this as an observation point of fact. I have seen a lot of people that are not curious, and they're very close-minded. They're not very good people morally or, you know, intellectually. So I believe that curiosity is a very good factor, but sometimes for me it can be a little too much. So, you know, when I come across a new experience, I definitely want to learn what I can about that experience and, you know, kind of log that in my brain. it's kind of hard to explain, but, you know, being curious is okay. I will not detour a curious nature. I actually find that to be a very valuable quality in a person, is to be curious. But, you know, there's limits to everything in life. There's no doubt about that. So, I am just, like, seriously rambling at this point. I am bored. Um, hmm. I'm seriously bored. So, summarize the video. I did the letter to my dad to at least let him know how he has made me feel because of his actions and his alcoholism. Life has generally been a little bit quiet. I'm hoping to get my car fixed relatively soon. I'm going to have to read up on how to install brakes, or brake pads. I hope it's just the brake pads. Mucho thanks to Dee Dee for helping me with this, because this is a very serious issue and I lack the funds to deal with this issue myself. Hopefully my tabs come in the mail, because I do not want to drive illegally if possible, because it's just going to be my luck that I get pulled over and ticketed. For which I'm sort of not, I don't want it. I really don't. But if it does happen, I'm not going to cry over spilt milk, because thankfully I have an extremely clean driving record. For being 27 years old and driving for only 6 years, no accidents of any kind. I have no accidents on my record and only 2 speeding tickets. I have to say I am doing rather well on the road. Most of the times I've been pulled over, it's usually been for, like, you know, a tail light's out or something like that, or both taillights are out in the case of being pulled over in Bremerton. To which I was able to get off with a warning, because my mom actually, when I called her while I was pulled over, you know, she actually would get off the phone with me, set up an appointment for the car, and be like, hey, you know, we've got it going in for repair. But, let's see, talking about my foster mom saved my life, my own personal experiences, my views on relationships. I don't know if I ever actually finished with that topic, but generally speaking, you know, I need a patient person, someone to understand and work with me. I have my faults. I will not deny that for a single second. There are a lot of aspects of my past that, you know, I have gotten over, but there are still plenty of aspects of my past that I have not gotten over. And I don't know if I can get over on my own. I try. I do try. But my general experience with counseling has been that it has not worked. I don't have very many outlets. This right here, this video, actually, the video blogging is currently my biggest outlet for a lot of the stress that I go through, or just general loneliness, as this particular case might be. And, you know, in terms of the sexual abuse and assaults that I have faced, even into adulthood, despite that, I have gotten over my fear towards sex. I used to actually fear it outright. It took me a very long time to get over that. Once I did, I am open to exploring it to some extent. Not to any extravagant extent of extreme perversion, if that makes any sort of sense. But I am extremely shy, and it I don't want a relationship to revolve around sex. I want an emotional connection, definitely, for sure. And I have to be able to trust somebody with my body just as much as I do my heart or soul. So I don't ever want to follow the belief of saving myself for marriage, which is kind of impossible at this point anyway. It was impossible from the start. Because the weird way of putting it is, to some extent, I do view my body as a temple, is the best way to put it. If someone can't treat that right, that won't last, because I don't have time to put up with bullshit or drama and, taking forever for things to happen. I don't feel I have the time to mess around and go through all the trials and tribulations of, trying to make somebody change for my sake, or have them make me change for their sake. I don't have the time to mess with that. I mean, yes, changes will happen in a relationship over time, but generally speaking, even though things do take time, part of me wants a very solid foundation and wants to make sure that it will last. And when it comes to matters in the bedroom, I am shy. I need to be given that space to open up, to find myself, to be allowed to go at my pace until I am comfortable with exploring and going out of my realm of a comfort zone. Good example being that, my ex-girlfriend was nothing but sex, 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 and emotional can go to hell. Her belief was that sex was the emotional connection that she needed, and it wasn't for me. And she tended to be the one wanting to receive and not really give, and I had a problem with that because I was not confident. Primarily because I didn't have the experience and because I was shy. I do not have the confidence more often than not. It's kind of a case-by-case basis on that one. Depends on the person that I'm with. Some people, I do feel that I can have a level of confidence to be in the lead, but for the most part, I don't like being in the lead to start with until I'm comfortable, if that makes any sort of sense. But let's see. Other than that, there's not really much to update on. I went rambling about some of my experiences. Generally speaking, I guess at the heart of what I'm trying to get at right now, I guess what bothers me as of late is the fact that, no one gives me the time of day, that because of my looks and lack of credentials, because of other insinuating circumstances where I have not been able to achieve this because I have not been given the chance, I have not had the money, and because of circumstances beyond my control, I have been forced to, move from one place to another, because there's been no other choice. I mean, literally, how to put this? Example, someone puts you on a restraining order, you're forced to obey that. Situations like that, things that I have absolutely no say in happen, and I have to take this route or be on the streets. Most of what I do at present, except for about the last year or so, I haven't actually had to. I did worry about it until recently when I actually brought that particular topic up to the person who brought me here in the first place. I had the worry that if I didn't, pretty much comply and shut my mouth and do what I was told, that I pretty much wasn't going to have a place to live, especially when this person was in a bad mood and would lash out at me and we would get into a conflict. I would worry about my living situation and the stability of that living situation. Because a stable living environment is usually only something I can dream of. Until now, I haven't had a positive, stable living environment since I left my last foster home back in 2002. It's really been touch and go until recently. It's actually almost a full year since I became involved with this family and my job as a live-in nanny. I don't actually get paid, in essence. I work for room and board, which is a decently good deal. I have no problems with it. I get frustrated from time to time because I can't pay debt. I can't buy clothing. I am actually in a very dire need for new clothing. A lot of the clothing that I have is getting holes. It's getting worn out. They're tearing because, generally speaking, pretty much half the clothing I have is more than 7 years old. And this includes my bras, which is extremely important because of the support factor. I can't even spend for, minor relaxation. I've always had it drilled into me to spend for needs before wants, but every now and then a small want is an okay thing. People have their limits. There are certain things that people must do to kind of wind down to be able to gather the patience to deal with whatever life is throwing at them on a constant basis. So I guess the occasional want is an okay thing. However, generally speaking, I would actually spend for necessity rather than want. And that's generally what I do tend to do when I do have any sort of amount of money. I try and pay for my own necessities. I try and be an independent person, life willing. It doesn't always work out like that, despite how hard I try. Society seems to pretty much be against me. I don't think I live in a very good area, and I don't even have the availability to move. I don't have it. I literally have less than $10 in either of the two bank accounts that I have. I have $5 in one bank account and less than $1 in the other bank account. That's the extent of the money that is in my name. And just try as I might, I haven't been able to find an actual job. I have officially been homeless and jobless by all legal means and accounts for 4 or 5 years. I have not been able to find anything, and this economy that we're in, it's not helping. I mean, I've moved to a better location, and I'm pretty confident I could find a minimum wage job in the area that I'm in, because I'm actually in a city now. But when I was living out on the coast, out in Grays Harbor County, the unemployment rate was above 13%. There were no jobs out there. Try as you might, even if someone was hiring, generally no one would get hired. I think it was more people would claim to look for, employers for the shits and giggles of it. It was more for show than actual necessity. Especially when it came to places like the Quinault Beach Resort and Casino. That's a very big one. They're always constantly hiring, yet I never see anybody generally new. Try as I might, I never actually land an interview, much less a call saying, hey, no, you didn't get the job. That, or you face, like when I worked at Subway, I was hired pretty much on the spot. I was there for about a month. And then when it came to the busiest weekend of the entire year for Ocean Shores, it's Sand and Sawdust Festival. You have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You have a 3-day festival event. You've got chainsaw carving, sand sculpting, car show, craft show, auctions, kite flying, sand sculpting contest. You've got horse riding on the beach. You know, it's the biggest tourist attraction for Ocean Shores that there is. That is the busiest weekend of the year for that area. Friday of Sand and Sawdust Festival weekend, the store manager and assistant manager quit and walked out. Chaos ensued. The store owner and her husband had to actually come in. And then all of us crew members were actually being told we had been taught how to do everything the wrong way. It was pandemonium. So not only did we lose our store manager and assistant manager, which actually happened to be a couple. This is why business and personal life are completely separate. We were in complete chaos because we lost the head of the snake, pretty much, and we had been taught everything wrong by actual company standards. And so the crew had to be retrained. Not to mention they had to find a new store manager and assistant manager to hire. And 3 of the crew members did not like me. And it was, with 2 of those members, it was not a hidden fact. Not a hidden fact at all. And during this 2 weeks of chaos, 2 of the 3 individuals that did not like me ended up getting hired for the new position of store manager and assistant manager. Listen, 2 weeks after that, I was let go without a reason. Not even 2 weeks of them being into power, I was gone. Then, when it came to tax season, they did not mail any of the W-2s out until January 31st. So the W-2s did not actually come in until almost middle of February, which was really a handful. It really was. That Subway does not work by actual company standards, I believe. It escapes that somehow. It doesn't seem to work efficiently within any sort of company policies that I believe I would see a company having. Especially in the case of that particular store owner, doesn't seem to actually pay a lot of attention to that particular store. The vibe that I got from that store was it was a standalone complex. It did not work by any standard set of rules that you would normally see a chain working, like. I can't explain this in any basic terms, but a lot of the qualities and what you'd think integral qualities a company, large chain company like Subway would have, did not exist. Not to mention it was pretty much like working in a high school cafeteria. There was drama. It was not hidden. There was not a lot of general concern given to the customers, which I found to be completely appalling. I am a very customer-oriented person. I like to work with people. I generally treat people the way I want to be treated, you know? Massive golden rule right there. And so, in essence, it pretty much was like working in a high school cafeteria because, you know, any issues that crew members had amongst themselves, or managers had with crew members, or crew members had with managers, was not dealt with in a very professional manner. And about 75% of the time was not a hidden fact, even from customers, which would really put a crimp on business. A lot of the values that you would think this place should have, it just didn't exist. The hiring process was completely appalling. Coming from my perspective, as I have never been in any sort of management position or hiring position, but from my perspective, had I been in that position, that would definitely not have been how I would have worked things. I would have had a lot more to it. Hiring would not be on the spot. You fill out the application, you have the interview an hour later, and boom, you're working by the next week. That would not have been how it would have been, generally speaking. Not to mention, you know, there would be a very strict standard of how things are run between, you know, crew members and any member of staff. Not to mention the emphasis being put on, if crew members had problems with each other, to definitely take it up with management before trying to deal with it amongst themselves and ultimately making the situation worse. If any problems were coming up on, you know, how things worked with the business in general, you know, take it up with the manager, not sit there and be dumb about it and, like, skirt around the issue. Not to mention the health hazards. I'm surprised that place ever actually passed a health inspection. It was appalling. No one was back doing dishes half the time. Place was not very sanitary, in my opinion. Hardly anyone ever actually got out into lobby and did jack shit. It was insane. That store was not a store. The Ocean Shore Subway definitely should not exist, in my personal opinion. Anyway, I probably should stop my rambling. My eyes are burning. It's 2:30 in the morning. Surprisingly, timed very well with how long this video is. Yeah, I need to stop my rambling. I'm gonna go to bed now. See you guys later, and take care. Sorry for the rambling. If you guys actually make it through this, I definitely applaud you. Because it takes someone with a serious amount of patience and attention span to keep up with me, I guess. Ciao.